Hi, welcome to part 2 of Geek vs. Geek, Star Wars vs. Star Trek. Now if you didn't see part 1, you want to click right here to make sure that you get to watch that so you understand the context of what you're watching now. But since you're here at part 2 of Star Wars vs. Star Trek, let's hand it right back to Hostbot 2000.
Thank you so much for having me back. Now for cross-examination. Team Star Trek, your cross-examination.
First, I want to set the stage by saying, as a Star Trek fan, I am super eagerly excited for where the franchise that I'm defending is going. Not only as a fan, but also as someone who has had the pleasure of working on J.J. Abrams' Star Trek sequel. What, as a Star Wars fan, are you excited for in the coming media of your franchise?
I don't need more Star Wars movies to continue loving Star Wars. It's a franchise that I will always cherish and love the way that it is, and I don't want a reboot. I'll definitely take more books, I'll take more video games, I'll take more TV series that don't try and emulate movies. I'm content. If you were to take any best films of all time list, where would Star Trek be on those lists, and where would Star Wars be on those lists?
I'm not concerned about the thoughts of others, or the lists, or the who is the grand Twilight-going audiences respecting more Star Trek or Star Wars. What I care about is amazing works of fiction. I'm not concerned about these top 10 lists where it's hanging out with The Godfather. That is great, and I do respect that it is in those lists, but I think that that is saying, how do you think other people think about it?
You mentioned earlier about heteronormality and challenging it, and progressiveness and diversity. Star Trek always challenges those things. How has Star Wars challenged any of those ideas?
I think in our world we are in the crux of an old world theology and a new world theology. And the fact that Jediism has been established as a new religion is really pushing people's ability to define religion. In fact, Lucas even said that the Force isn't a specific religion, it's just life. Aside from the Borg, which are just a version of Cybermen, what Star Trek villain comes close to Darth Vader?
I could sit here and list a lot of Star Trek villains that they encounter on their travels. If you weren't paying attention, this is an incredibly long-running series with a lot of adventures. We've got Khan, we've got Q, we've got Locutus of the Borg, and I first of all think it's really unfair to say, oh, other than the Borg, who do you have when we have Darth Vader? When you listed one villain who was totally delegitimized and now isn't even as cool as he was.
This argument is out of this world. Closing statements. Team Star Trek, your closing statement.
While Star Wars may be a more popcorn-friendly blockbuster that appeals to a larger amount of moviegoers, Star Trek is something that has had actual influence in human culture, in science, that has led the way for actual technology that we use today and that we strive to achieve in the future. And when the aliens arrive and find the wreckage of the human race, I would much, much rather them find a box set of Star Trek, for that tells the story of who, as a human species, who we were, who we are, what our flaws were, and what we cared about.
Make Trek, not war.
And may you live long and prosper.
Team Star Trek, your closing statement.
I love Star Trek, I love the characters of Star Trek, but at the end of the day, when I hear the breathing of Darth Vader, when I hear the sound of the lightsaber, when I hear the squeaks and beeps of R2-D2, I have an emotional reaction.
It is ultimately, at the end of the day, a more universal, iconic, and timeless saga.
And in my opinion, our slash fiction is of much more quality.
Okay, that was Geek vs. Geek, Star Wars vs. Star Trek.
Who won, Hostbot?
You guys are such nerds.
Well, I guess Hostbot can't tell us who won again, but you can leave your answers in the comments below which team you thought won this debate.
Geek vs. Geek is part of a segment we call Wildcard Wednesdays, where we choose from this deck to decide what...
No! We're not drawing a Wildcard Wednesday card this week. We're doing something different, which we will announce on Monday.
Alright, well I guess we'll announce a video on Monday, but until then we want to leave you with something we can all agree about.
Star Wars is a movie that is super accessible, and it came out when my parents were young. I was obsessed with it when I was little, and I can watch it with my nieces and nephews who are also still into it.
There are definitely a lot of similarities between Star Wars and Star Trek, but at the end of the day, it's really like comparing apples and oranges. Star Trek is sci-fi, Star Wars is fantasy. They're two different types of movies for two very different kinds of evenings.
Of course I love Star Wars. I have an R2-D2 cup holding my pens at work right now, and I had so many droids as toys. And one of my role models, George Takei, said that Star Wars fans and Star Trek fans should all get along because we all help each other and they help to make each other happen.
Stop cutting funding for space exploration. The moon's not going anywhere. Maybe we should go to the moon. Use your head. Good. Was that a good video, guys?
Bye.
How was that, Hostbot?
You guys have a bigger budget than they had. Adam Pereira ran away from me. Adam Pereira ran away from me. It was nice. I went to the Lockmaster.